The thing that made you special as a kid might be the exact thing that's keeping you stuck right now, and you don't even see it happening. You know that feeling where you look at your life and you're like, this isn't where I thought I'd be? Like you were the kid who got it. Teachers loved you, you didn't even have to try that hard. Report cards were easy. You just absorbed things faster than everyone around you. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you assumed that meant life would kind of work out. That being smart was like a cheat code. But now you're sitting here, maybe mid-20s, maybe early 30s, and something feels off. Like you're underperforming. And the confusing part is you can't even figure out why. There's actually a specific reason this happens to almost every former smart kid. And once you see it, it changes how you understand yourself completely. Here's where it gets weird. When you were young and everything came easy, your brain learned a really dangerous lesson. It learned that effort equals failure. Think about that for a second. If you were the kid who never had to study, who picked things up on the first try, who got praised for being naturally talented, then every time you did have to struggle with something, it didn't feel like progress. It felt like something was wrong. Because in your world, smart people don't struggle. Smart people just get it. So you started avoiding anything that required real grinding. Not consciously. You didn't sit there and decide to avoid hard things. Your brain just quietly steered you away from situations where you might look like you didn't know what you were doing. You picked the classes you knew you'd ace. You dropped hobbies the moment they got difficult. You chose paths where your natural ability could carry you without breaking a sweat. And here's the thing. That worked. For years, it worked. You coasted through school, maybe even college, and it felt fine. But that's just the surface, because the real damage was happening somewhere you couldn't see. While you were being the smart kid, everyone around you, the ones who weren't as naturally gifted, they were learning something you never had to learn. They were learning how to try, how to sit with confusion and not panic, how to be bad at something and keep going. They learned how to fail a test and study differently the next time instead of deciding they weren't meant for it. They were building this invisible muscle that you never needed to build because you were talented enough to skip that entire phase, and you didn't even realize you were skipping it. You thought you were ahead, but you were actually falling behind in the one skill that matters more than intelligence in adult life, the ability to push through something that doesn't come naturally. Because nothing worth doing as an adult is easy on the first try. Starting a business isn't easy, getting in shape isn't easy, building real relationships, learning a new skill at 27, none of that is easy. And the former smart kid hits that wall and doesn't think, okay, I need to grind through this. The former smart kid hits that wall and thinks, maybe this isn't for me. That thought right there, that's the scar tissue from years of being told you were gifted, because gifted kids don't struggle. So if you're struggling, you must be in the wrong place. And you move on. Again. And again. Quick side note, bro. If this is hitting different and you like ideas that kind of rearrange how you see yourself, hit subscribe. I break stuff like this down every week. And it only gets deeper from here. And this is where the whole thing flips. Because it's not just that you didn't learn how to try. It's that being the smart kid gave you an identity. And that identity is a trap. When smart is your thing, what people know you for, what your parents bragged about, you start protecting that identity at all costs. You won't start things you might fail at because failing might mean you're not actually smart. You won't ask questions because smart people already know the answers. You won't put your work out into the world because what if it's not genius level? So you sit on your potential, you overthink, you plan, you research, you prepare. But you never actually do the thing. And from the outside, it looks like laziness. But it's not laziness. It's fear. It's the fear that if you really try and it doesn't work, then the one thing you believed about yourself, that you're smart, might not be enough. So your brain would rather not try at all than risk finding out. You stay in this middle ground where you're not failing, but you're not really doing anything either. And that gap between what you could do and what you're actually doing, that's where the frustration lives. So here's what's actually going on. It was never about being smart or not. The problem is, you were given an identity before you were old enough to question it. You were told, you're the smart one, the same way someone else was told, you're the funny one. And you built your entire sense of self around it. Every decision, every avoidance, every half-started project, all of it traces back to a kid who believed being gifted meant never struggling. The smart kid didn't fail because they weren't smart enough. They got stuck because they were never allowed to be a beginner. And now you're dealing with the weight of an identity you didn't choose in a world that doesn't care how fast you read in 3rd grade. The thing that made everyone proud of you is the same thing making you quietly disappointed in yourself now. And that's not a personal failure. That's what happens when your greatest strength never gets challenged long enough to grow roots.